Welcome to Conversations with Dr. Stephen Greer. This is brought to you by the World Puja Network, and I'd like to thank the folks at the World Puja Network for hosting us every 2 weeks on this show where we give you an update on the projects, the Disclosure Project and CSETI, as well as the Orion Project. And I'm joined today by Linda Willitts, who has worked with me for about 12 years on these projects, and we're going to cover today the really exciting events that happened about a month ago, a little over a month ago, in Joshua Tree National Park, where we had a expedition out under the stars making contact, and where we had about 5 hours of continuous contact from extraterrestrial signaling from the Orion sector of space, as well as the filming of a craft up in that area. So if you are familiar with the night sky with Orion and Orion's sword, that is the origin point of what we're going to be discussing today, and it's quite an amazing series of events. So thank you, Linda, for joining us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It was an amazing experience we had in Joshua Tree.
Well, you want to sort of set the stage for folks and give them an idea of sort of an overview of what happened that week?
Sure. Well, I'll just start by mentioning in 2007, almost to the day, just really within, it was like November 6th or 7th, 2007, we had what we called the Orion Transmissions. One night we were out in the field, and it was almost 1 a.m., and we were getting ready to leave, and Dr. Greer has a crystal. It's a rose quartz crystal ball about 2 inches in diameter, and he just held it up into the air as far as he could reach, and suddenly the radar detector that I had under my chair, a cordless radar detector, started going off like crazy, and it went off for 23 minutes solid, and meanwhile Dr. Greer was pointing the crystal ball in various directions, and when he pointed it in the direction of Orion, his body was like a human antenna that was connecting, as he says, a step-down transformer between the ETs and the celestials in the heavens in the vicinity of Orion, and it was going through him, and the radar detector was being activated as an audible signal so all the rest of us could participate. So that really, it totally blew us away. I mean, it was just a really profound experience last November. And so this November, we had another group at Joshua Tree, and we went out every night. And the first night that we went out to this site that we go to in Joshua Tree, it was a beautiful, amazing night. We had the ET called Kindness appeared very close that night, and we were all
spacecraft. Yes, we saw her spacecraft very close, right?
And it was interesting too because we saw a scout ship first that kind of like cleared the way for her. And then she appeared very close in the northeast. And then the group was just suffused with this wonderful fragrance of carnations. That's a signal that the avatar is near, and it happened to be right at a point where Dr. Greer was talking about Barack Obama, interestingly enough. But we've had fragrances wafted through to individuals usually in the past, but this time it pretty much suffused the entire group of 40. There were 44 people out that night, and almost everyone was able to smell it very strongly, and it stuck around for probably 20 minutes.
What was beautiful about this is that many people may be familiar from some of the Vedic traditions that when there are very evolved beings nearby, frequently angelic or other highly evolved beings, there will frequently be a fragrance. And there was this most beautiful essence of like the most pure carnation sort of smell that any of us had ever smelled. And it didn't just happen for a moment. It lasted for a good 10 minutes, and everyone in the whole area smelled it. And this is the dry desert up at 4,000 or 5,000 feet. There was nothing like that blooming out there, and this was clearly connected to the fact that we had an earlier contact, and we were in this state of cosmic awareness together, meditating out under the stars, which is what we do when we're contacting the extraterrestrial civilizations that are basically guardian function over the evolution of the Earth, and that are involved with the planet. And of course, there's a very strong connection between these very advanced God-conscious extraterrestrial civilizations, which are people that have physical bodies and spacecraft and move through interstellar space and through dimensions, with the very developed, highly evolved angelic and celestial realm. Because just as humans can have those sort of connections spiritually, certainly people from other star systems do, and that's what was happening. And it began that very first night, and it basically never stopped. It was just an amazing week, and we've had this before, but nothing quite so prolonged. And it was sort of a premise, sort of a given us a little bit of a feel for what would happen the rest of the week. And part of what was happening at the instant that occurred is that I was talking about all the changes that were coming, including the changes that were coming with the election of Barack Obama to the presidency, which had not yet happened. This was, I believe, the night before the election.
Right. Right. It was. And we had a little preview of a radar detector going off. I have an Escort cordless radar detector that just runs on batteries that I bring out all the time, and it sits under my chair, and it very rarely goes off. Sometimes we'll go several trainings, and it doesn't make a peep. And when it does go off, it's usually just in short bursts in response to a craft coming in close by, or perhaps an ET being walking right near it. And there was another woman this year that had a Cobra radar detector hooked to a battery pack. So she had hers in the field, and this first night out at this Joshua Tree site, she was also in charge of the boombox where we play the beeping tones that were recorded inside a crop circle in England many years ago and transmit those to the ETs. And she was having trouble with the CD. It wasn't working right. And her radar detector started going off, right, which was right near the boombox. And it seemed like that was the ETs letting her know that they were locked on. It was okay that her beeping tones weren't working out too well.
Right. And what I think some background is needed here. Over the years, the contact that CSETI has made with these visitors happens both the way we initiate the contact. We have these electromagnetic signals that we send out into space over radio frequencies, and we also have laser light that we send out up from our site so that they can get a kind of a lock-on to where we are. And then we use higher states of consciousness so that the group can then remote view into deep space and connect to the extraterrestrial communication systems, because if you go faster than the speed of light, you're crossing into the what the mystics used to call the etheric or astral realm, where thought is the main means of communication, but it's interfacing with a machine. In other words, there are very advanced technologies that are electromagnetic that interface with directed thought, just like a laser light is coherent light that's coherent. But a coherent thought that's very clear coming from a deep state of consciousness can enter into and interface with these really advanced and subtle electromagnetic machinery and the devices that these extraterrestrial spacecraft have. And that's how we've set up the whole CE5 initiative, which we've talked about before, where we talk about humans making contact with these visitors and inviting them within the paradigm of universal peace and in the time of transformation of the Earth to a time of universal peace, to come and visit with us and to work with us in this great undertaking. So that's the sort of the background. Now, what these devices are that Linda's referring to, it's interesting because with all the stuff and the billions of dollars that have been spent in the space program and with the SETI program, what we have found is that these extraterrestrial civilizations, when they're coming nearby or wanting to send pulsed information to us, a simple laser and radar detector like you would use in your car can be put out, and those will begin to interact. And that's what happened. And now you have to understand, let's set the stage here, which is kind of where I wanted to introduce this. We were out in the center, the dead center of Joshua Tree National Park, 20, 30 miles from any civilization, any source of microwave towers or anything like that. And these detectors that we have that give this electronic tone, they don't go off just for, if you walk by them or something. They require that they be hit with like a police radar scope or some high source of microwave tower or what have you. And normally at this site it's completely silent. The detectors don't do anything until we start having contact. And then, of course, when we have contact, not always but frequently, there's this amazing amount of energy that is in the area that's, and I want to explain how this is happening. The extraterrestrial vehicles and their communication systems are usually phasing faster than the speed of light, which of course would not make a radar detector go off. But they can step it down to where it's then moving against the linear space-time continuum and begins to hit the electromagnetic field. And as it hits the electromagnetic field around us, it can very specifically make those detectors go off, so much so that one will go off and one 3 feet away will not. Or one that's 3 feet away will go off in a different spectrum of the electromagnetic, whether it's X-band or K-band or laser band, than the other one. Now, this is impossible. If this was coming from a man-made source like a police cruiser or a Ranger or something like that, it would be the same spectrum at the same time, particularly when they're that close together. And so it's very, very, very anomalous electromagnetic evidence of what's going on frequently with objects in the sky that the group is seeing or a craft that's moving across space that we're filming with our night scope or what have you. And that's what happened this week, and it happened for 5 hours with these detectors, a total of about 5 hours of continuous. And the transmissions, the electromagnetic beeping you hear, are actually just evidences of packets of information that's being communicated into consciousness. And while these things were beeping, while all these detectors were beeping, I was in a state of consciousness where I was super awake, if you can use that concept, or in a state of cosmic consciousness, where the packets were coming in, and then I was able to translate what the meaning of the packets of information were in sequence, so that they would beep and I would translate, and then it would go on. This went on for hours, and we actually have a very good recording of that. We're calling these the Orion Transmissions, and it was, of course, 40-some people observed this, and it was a life-altering experience, I think, for everyone who was there, frankly. So I know this sounds a little far out, but this is, of course, what you would expect from civilizations that travel faster than the speed of light and who are mainly interfacing through awareness, consciousness, thought, and the electromagnetic spectrum. So even though these are relatively crude devices, we've also had magnetometers that do the same thing, that pick up magnetic field flux, where the magnetic field will move in flux as a craft is in the area or as the signals are coming in, because they affect the electromagnetic spectrum. And the magnetic part of the electromagnetic spectrum fluxes as these craft move through. In fact, the classified projects at Lockheed used to call these devices that they were making that were trying to copy the extraterrestrial devices, they called them flux liners because of this magnetic field flux effect as they move through the electromagnetic field and the magnetic flux. So we get these detectors that really are off the shelf. They're not modified, but the ETs certainly know how to interface with them. So we have these events happen. It's quite a remarkable experience.
The ETs were so interactive that at one point the radar detector that I had was beeping quietly. It actually makes more of a chiming sound, and it was going quietly. And you made the comment to me, "Could I turn that up or anything?" And it was on the highest volume. And as soon as he said that, the next time it went off very loudly. The ETs were controlling the volume. Correct,
which doesn't happen when a police cruiser or a microwave tower sets those things off. It's very anomalous. In fact, in 2007, these tones actually then levitated where the sound was above the chair, even though the device was on the floor of the desert underneath the chair. So it's just really quite remarkable. And, of course, while this is going on, there are craft that are seen in space and moving around, and some that are, while they're dematerialized, are seen moving in the field around us that are sort of scintillating, like shimmering objects moving through the desert. And, of course, you can imagine the effect on people who've never had this sort of experience being out there for the first time while something like this is happening, not just for, a minute or two, but for, 5 hours. At one point, it was 2 hours at a time. It went on for so long, I had to actually cut it off because I couldn't take it anymore, frankly. But it's really amazing, and the message that was coming through is very much about the transformation of the planet, and that these higher ET civilizations that are interstellar and who are extremely evolved civilizations, not only spiritually but socially and in consciousness, that the time for the establishment of universal peace on Earth and of the Earth transitioning to a world that is living together with new energy technologies and new consciousness so that we can become worthy members of an interstellar community, that time is rapidly approaching. And when I say rapidly, I don't mean hundreds of years from now, but months, days, months, years from now. I mean very, very close. And so we live in this time of enormous change that's going to be happening over the coming months and next few years. And that's what the message was about, but it had a lot of detailed information. We hope to get this out in the form of a sort of a booklet that goes through all the information that was downloaded, and we also hope to have a CD with it so that people can actually hear how these magnetic detectors are going off and actually at times punctuating things that I would receive and say, and they would make a punctuation mark at key points in the discussion or key points in the commentary that I'm making. So it's really an amazing experience, and I think everyone who was there was, to say blown away is an understatement. We all were. We were all just stunned, and we had also, I believe it was our second night out at the Joshua Tree. We had this massive and unbelievably huge, I think it was the first night out,
yeah, it was at the very
object
end
that came right above us that illuminated the entire desert. It was after some people had already left, but the people who were driving back stopped their vehicles because the entire Joshua Tree National Park was suffused in this brilliant blue-white light, and then this object came straight down over our heads right in front of us, and it was just one of the most amazing sightings that people had ever had.
It was just a brilliant flash. It was just incredible, and some of us happened to be looking right at it. But like you said, the people that were driving away were just mind-boggled because they saw the whole desert floor light up.
Right.
So no one missed it. It was incredible.
Yeah. No, it was. No one could miss it. Luckily, I was looking right at it when it happened, which seems almost always the case.
I was too.
And it was stunning, and it was so bright that it was almost blinding, and beautiful. And there were some people there from who make very big full-length feature films who were there investigating what we were doing, who were just, it was one of the biggest events of their lives to see this. I'll just leave it like that, because it was an affirmation to them that these visitors are not only here, but they're very much interacting with our group, and that the message of what we're bringing about the time of transformation of the planet from one of division and chaos to one of universal peace and abundance and sustainability using wondrous new sciences and technologies, that all this is unfolding all around us very, very, very quickly now, faster and faster each month. The pace of change is just amazing.
And a lot of the translation that you gave also referred to us putting ourselves at service. There was a lot about that.
Yeah, that's the key thing about right now is what is being asked of humans at this point is to let go of the mundane things of life and to embrace the vision of all of us working together in this vineyard to transform the situation on this planet into one of a sustainable, peaceful civilization that can then have the chance of establishing enlightenment globally, because we cannot evolve any further as a civilization using both the consciousness and the science and technologies that have gotten us into this catastrophe that we're facing right now environmentally and also geoeconomically and geopolitically, where because of the nature of the greedy cartels and cabals that are running the planet, we're sitting here cannibalizing Earth and actually committing, what I've coined the term planeticide, the killing of an entire planet and its biosphere out of ignorance and stupidity and greed, and that all of us are going to have to step up to this and come forward into, service and fearless service, a true spirit warriors who will do this, because there isn't any more time to procrastinate this to another generation of humans, that we're just simply out of time to make this transition, and that's why it is urgent. And that's what these messages were, very, very urgent. And they started in November of 2007, when we had this first one, and that message was very urgent. And I was also told, quite frankly, that a lot of these very highly intelligent civilizations are based or are out in the sector of space of Orion. And then I started looking into Orion and its history with the ancient Vedas, the ancient Egyptian information, Sirius, and it's really an interesting connection I found, and that's what we were being told and in these transmissions. But the big message was really about stepping into service for this time of bringing out the new sciences and the consciousness of establishing a peaceful civilization, and that the entire universe is standing ready to welcome us with open arms at the very moment that we as a people decide to live together in a civilized and peaceful fashion. So this is the great undertaking, the establishment of universal peace. And by the way, world peace is not big enough. It has to be universal peace. And so forget about world peace. World peace, if that means doing what a lot of the secret government programs want, and that is have the world peacefully united in a war against other planets, which is part of this stupid disinformation programs that are out there that involve all the hoaxed abductions and hoaxed mutilations and all the hoaxed information around this subject. By the way, that's a non-starter. And it's interesting because a lot of members of the cabal have recently approached us recognizing that is a non-starter, and they're wanting to step forward with us in educating the public and our leaders around the world on the fact that we have got to bring these technologies out for the creation of an abundant civilization that no longer needs fossil fuels and no longer needs to be fighting over these silly things that we're always fighting over. And there's a lot of changes happening that are, quite frankly, millennial importance, of things that are probably some of the most important developments in many, many, many years on Earth. And that's why the people listening to this interview today need to understand that it's time for people to stand up and actually make the change happen, because it's going to happen only because humans accept it. And we're the children of Earth, and only the children of Earth can say, we will accept this new time, and we will accept this a whole new era in consciousness. It can't be imposed from outside any more than you can impose Jeffersonian democracy on Iraq. You have to have people who are saying, we want to have this knowledge, we want to have a civilization that's living in peace, and we want to be able to have these really advanced free energy and anti-gravity technologies for the use of the people of the Earth for peaceful and good purposes. And this is something we have to do. This is we have free will, and as children of the earth, we're the ones responsible for our destiny and the destiny of the earth. However, these advanced civilizations and the celestial realm with whom they work are standing ready to work with us. But we have to say we're willing. We're willing to put ourselves at service to this undertaking. And if we don't actually say that and communicate that, it can't happen. So that's the first step, is to know and then to put oneself completely at service to this. And that's what we're so blessed to have so many people working with the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence and also with our energy projects doing that. And by the way, you can find out more about this at CSETI.org, that's CSETI.org, and also at the OrionProject.org. And so this is the time to do it, and it was made very clear at this gathering up in the high desert of California in Joshua Tree National Park that the time of the great quickening and awakening is really happening right now.
Well, we got the real direct message, even I got it, that these Orion transmissions were heralding the beginning of a whole new era, and there were ET beings and celestials and avatars, but so many ET beings were coming in. We could see them, we could see objects in the sky, and sometimes those objects would coincide with the radar detector going off. And when the radar detector stopped, the object would disappear. And we had objects signaling us from the sky. We had ET beings on the ground that were in astral form. So we saw them as sparkles and as lights on the ground. Just a huge gathering. And Dr. Greer said that also all of our ancestors in spirit were gathered, and our progeny, yet unborn, were gathered, and it was just a huge celebration of the new era that we're entering.
Right. It had a feeling of just the beautiful sacredness that's very hard to put into words, and I wish everyone listening could have been there. But we hope to get this information out as soon as possible about what the messages were that were in the Orion transmissions, and with it a CD of the actual sound of these devices going off. And when you listen to it and realize that this group was out in the middle of this wilderness, dozens of miles from any man-made source of electromagnetic energy. And while this was happening, by the way, our webmaster Todd Goldenbaum for the OrionProject.org has a night scope, third-generation night scope hooked up to a digital camera, and he was able to film a spacecraft that moved right over into Orion. And so that happened in the midst of all of this, and I saw it as well. And what I think that the whole message of this is that now we have to actually put one foot in front of the other and manifest in the world the vision of a complete transformation of the earth into a time of universal peace and abundance, and using technologies that enable the human race to live peacefully with Gaia without damaging the environment, so that we can have a genuinely just and sustainable civilization, which we don't have yet. And the irony of course, all of this is that we could have had this decades ago. There's a European government that called me last year and said, look, we have 54 years to correct that since Eisenhower had a meeting in 1954, July of 54, with these extraterrestrial beings in California, not far from where we were at Muroc, which is near the Edwards complex, that we basically, Eisenhower wanted to disclose all this information to the world then, but the financial interest and the military-industrial interest circled their wagons and convinced him not to. And since then, our leaders around the world lost completely control of this so-called MJ-12 or Majestic group that took all of this information, took the technologies, and created their own international sort of secret government operation dealing with this. And as I have said before, in my briefings with the CIA Director Woolsey under the Clinton administration, and providing briefings to many heads of state and diplomats and leaders around the world, what you find is that these people, as well as most of the senior officials at the Pentagon and senior officials at the CIA, are being denied access to this information. And this kind of blows people's minds to hear that a sitting U.S. president or a sitting CIA director or a sitting head of the Defense Intelligence Agency would be denied access to these projects even after being completely convinced that this was going on. And I have given them project code numbers and code names so that they could find out about them, and they're still denied access. That the entire rule of law and constitutional system has been subverted, and this stuff has been hidden because the change that would attend this disclosure, and this is what we talk about at disclosureproject.org, would completely liberate the earth from the economic and oil slavery that is not only destroying our civilization, but destroying the Earth's biosphere. But, of course, it would also mean that people who have hundreds of trillions of dollars in assets in energy commodities and energy companies and utilities would have to find another line of work. And that, basically every home and every car can have its own energy plant that would have a free energy source from this so-called zero-point energy field or quantum vacuum flux field, which is how a UFO or an ET craft is functioning, so that there would be no need to burn oil or to burn coal or to have nuclear power plants creating all this toxic waste to run our civilization. It would be a total paradigm shift. But the shift that has to attend that technological shift is also a shift in consciousness where we as a people come together and decide that we're going to live together peacefully, that these sciences and technologies are going to be used for peaceful purposes, and that we're not going to allow them to be used for warfare and aggressive purposes. Because one of the risks of this, and this is something that is brought up to my attention by Air Force and CIA people frequently, is that any of these technologies can be made into a weapon system, which they can. And of course, then that you get into this existential debate of, well, do we let the entire civilization we currently have destroy the biosphere and collapse, or do we decide to come together as a people, an international community, that says we're going to live together in peace, and we're going to have an enforceable peace, and anyone who disrupts that will be restrained, and that these technologies will be allowed to be used for peaceful purposes so that we can end poverty, end the injustice of the economic slavery the world is under, and free the earth from the burden of its of Gaia suffering under the weight of 6.5 billion people trying to heat their homes with oil and use gasoline in their cars and coal in their electric generating plants, and come out with these new sciences. So this is a very big undertaking. It's the biggest undertaking in recorded human history, and it has to happen relatively quickly. So that's why these Orion transmissions were emphasizing the need for people to step forward together in service to this work.
And another really important point that you talked about when we were there at Joshua Tree was that these Orion transmissions were not just intended for the 40 whatever of us that were out in the field those nights. They were intended not only for every single being on Earth, and every being on Earth was affected by them, but you said that they were replicated simultaneously all the way from the Godhead and through every world, and that, and I have this written down, you said it was simultaneous, a non-local resonant field propagation throughout the cosmos, which affects the entire cosmos, not just us.
That's correct. Because what happens, if you understand the nature of mind, as Erwin Schrödinger said, the total number of minds in the universe is one. And this was emanating from such a deep level of consciousness that it was actually enlivening and quickening that level of consciousness infinitely throughout the entire cosmos, and that it was intended for and was moving through beings throughout the entire cosmos, and being concentrated through our circle of 44 people into the earth and into all the people of the earth, because it gets into resonant field propagation where, because of our genetic makeup and our human consciousness, there is a closer resonance capability with fellow humans, and the old saying, like seeketh like and taketh pleasure in the company of its kind. The idea that here we are together, all children of the earth, and everyone there was hearing and feeling. And I have to say that what I'm not communicating is the profound feeling of what was coming in during these transmissions. It was awe-inspiring,
right,
to everyone there. And it was unmistakably something real. There's no question that this was something being beamed into the area from both within ourselves but also from space, and that everyone there then became sort of a electromagnetic conscious resonator that was interfacing with everyone else on the planet. And this is also, by the way, the power of meditation and prayer, is that as humans, as we enter into those states of higher states of awareness, it actually affects people we may never meet. It affects everyone on the planet, and it moves everything forward. So the concept of non-locality, where there is this profound effect in consciousness. And what was one of the beautiful things we did this week also, I might add, is that we did two, since we're on the World Puja Network, we did two Vedic pujas that week. One on Tuesday, November 4th, which happened to be election night when President Obama won. And then another one when we went to this cave where there's this beautiful shamanic Native American cave where we take people to go in and meditate in small groups that usually holds 8 or 9 people. And we did a puja at the entrance to this ancient shamanic Native American cave where many, many of these sort of experiences have happened, and meditated together, and each person became an ambassador to the universe from Earth. And that's what these, by the way, you can go at CSETI.org, CSETI.org, and we should have the schedule up for next year, where we're going to be doing these expeditions in various places around the world. We do them in Joshua Tree, and we do them at Mount Shasta, and in Colorado, and Crestone, and on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and usually 1 or 2 other places throughout the year. And it's a wonderful week where people have these experiences of not only seeing these extraterrestrial craft, but experiencing the state of cosmic awareness and God consciousness, and this sort of transformative experience as a group. And that has a huge effect on the planet. The reason we continue to do this with all the other tasks that we've undertaken is that it's a very deepening and enlightening process that then has an effect on larger and larger spheres of people. And in fact, because it does emanate from this deep, pure state of awareness, it has an effect for everyone on the planet and has an effect that is universal. So this event that was happening with these transmissions really did have an effect on the entire order of the cosmos and on the entire planet, and everyone there felt that. It was very, very powerful. I don't think there was a single person there who wasn't deeply affected by this. And
right. It was like,
you want to, Linda, you have a recording. I don't know how well it'll come through, but if you put your, Linda recorded this with a digital recorder, and you'll be able to hear these really strange, anomalous electromagnetic tones and the sequence of them, as well as some of the things I was saying while it was happening. You want to play that now?
Yes, and I'll just explain. There are 2 different radar detectors you'll hear. One is a little more chiming and kind of more melodic sounding than the other, and you can hear that they're going off simultaneously on different bands, and it's only a short 3-minute clip. So,
right, and by the way, I want to point out that that's technically impossible.
Right.
If this was coming from a man-made source, it would have been, they would have gone off at the same time, and they would have been on the same band. And what you have are different spectra of the parts of the electromagnetic spectrum affecting devices that are a few feet away at the same event at the same time. It's very anomalous.
These devices were only 2 to 3 feet apart during this.
Right. Why don't you go ahead and play that so people have a sense of, and visualize being out in the center of Joshua Tree National Park, 30 miles from anywhere in civilization.
Well, that was right. Yeah, it's moving too. Set in that light in the northeast. This is an ET vehicle up here. It's an exo-atmosphere. Now they're confirming what I'm saying. Please listen. This is the master control craft from the Deep Space Center. See? And we are being bathed in celestial knowledge and light. Look at this. Various frequencies simultaneously. Now see the craft that is here around us and your astral celestial vision and the beings who are here. Open your hands like this and let their energy pour into you. The knowledge of this transmission. I told our group that as soon as we arrived and made circle here, this would happen.
Yeah, you did.
Didn't I?
You did.
Yeah. Oh, that's the other detector. It's two up. Yet another frequency? Is it? Yeah. Yep. That's it, yes?
The one under my chair
There's a being right here.
speaks loudly and softly.
There's a being right here. You can't hear me. Oh, my God. My God, they're coming. Let it flow through you and all the people of the earth, the knowledge of enlightenment. The transformation is happening.
That's a 3-minute clip.
Yeah, so imagine that for 5 hours over the course of the week. One of the things you may have heard me say, I don't know if you could hear it through the phone, because we're doing this interview by phone, is that the people who'd been there before we arrived, none of the detectors were making any sound. And after we arrived and made circle with everyone, this started immediately, which is what I had sensed would happen that night, and I told our group that was in the car I was driving in that this is what was going to happen, and that it would be a profound event that would last for a prolonged period of time, and that it would start as soon as we arrived and made circle, all of us together. And in fact, that is what happened. And then there were these ET craft that were up in the area of Orion, and the information that then began to flow through was really beautiful.
And it was so intense. It's very anomalous for a radar detector to get stuck on just a solid tone. I mean, that just doesn't happen.
Right.
And then while the one was stuck on the solid tone, the other one was going off on a different band at the same time. And so it was, I mean, that was a really intense 3 minutes. But we had several periods like that, and it was just incredible the whole time. It was just amazing.
Yeah, and what I was experiencing was this direct imaging of the ETs and of the future of the Earth as this amazingly beautiful, enlightened sphere floating in through space, filled with billions of people who were living together peacefully, whose needs were taken care of, where poverty had been eliminated and where people were moving in the direction of enlightenment together, because finally there was peace on earth and there was finally the means to have an abundant civilization freed from poverty and freed from want and free from warfare. And this is the culmination of this entire period of our evolution, and it's the closing out of one cycle of the Earth's evolution. In the Vedas, it'd be called a yuga, or a large cycle, and the opening of another cycle that's about 500,000 years long that we're entering, the hallmark of which is universal peace. But the culmination at the end of this cycle will be that every person on the planet is in a state of cosmic awareness and God consciousness and enlightenment, and we actually will be extraterrestrial beings going to other civilizations to help them advance from the time where they are to a time of enlightenment and advanced science and technology, as well as advanced consciousness. And this is how the cycle keeps replicating like a fractal throughout the cosmos forever. And it's very beautiful, this time that we've entered.
It was such a profound experience, and I do want to mention, like right before the clip that I played, we had a craft that was out in space that was flashing at regular intervals. It was behaving like some craft that we had at the Charlottesville training back in October.
Correct. A month before. That's right. It was just 1 month earlier.
And this happened. There was some relationship between this major burst of activity through the radar detectors and this craft that was flashing us, because it was up there flashing, and then when this major activity from the radar detectors finished, that craft disappeared. And we had a number of times when there were interactions between craft that we could see out in space and the radar detectors going off too. And the avatar, the presence of the avatar, we could feel that as well.
I mean, this was, you could tell that there was very, very exalted, advanced awareness there that was not only extraterrestrial, but also on the celestial level and on the level of these of the avatar, the great sort of oversoul God consciousness beings for this period of time that we're entering. So it was really deeply spiritual and moving for people, and some people were actually weeping during this, and it was just a life-altering experience. And what I've found is that this is increasing as we do these expeditions, and it's because over the last 15 years since we have formalized these contact programs, we now have a situation where we have major world powers in Europe wanting to make open contact for peaceful purposes who are now communicating with us. We have members, people who have been involved in keeping these programs secret and even perhaps doing some rather nasty things over the years, now deciding that it's time to change directions. We see an entire quickening with the new energy efforts, where we have not one but three major developments all at the same time, all within the last couple of months. We have just been awarded all the Stan Meyer equipment, and this was the guy who had a car running just on water, where there would be no pollution from it, that would enable all the 1 billion motor vehicles on the road today to eventually be converted over to something that would be non-polluting from just using the excess water that you use in your house from showers and drains, could be filtered and run with maybe a little additive in your gas tank, and you'd run your car on water. Because water is hydrogen and oxygen, which is, thank you very much, if you can separate it by using these new energy technologies, very clean burning and very, very efficient. There's no emissions. The only emission is water vapor. And then we have two other inventors that we have recently through the Orion Project, and I'd like to thank people for supporting the OrionProject.org. You can go there and see what we're doing, the OrionProject.org. We have two inventors in the last couple months that we've identified who have had developed over the years electromagnetic generators that are so-called over unity or free energy generators that access the zero-point energy field and put out more energy than goes into them. And these are ones that are in the final stages of development. We hope in the next month and a half or two we will have those in our possession and put them into our security process and get them disclosed to the public and begin to bring them out to the public so that we can get off of oil and gas and create free energy motors for vehicles and generators for homes and power plants that are completely free of using any earth-damaging sources of power. So all of this is happening very quickly. And I think that this is why we're seeing a almost unbelievable exponential growth in the consciousness on these matters, and at the same time, a lot of the highly compartmented operations. Recently, I've had some meetings with some folks who for years have been involved in very, very secret operations related to this, who have now reached out to us to be of assistance, to try to make alliances, and who have concluded that it's time to bring all of this information as well as the technologies out and basically start an entirely new economy based on a free energy abundance and a very different way of life than we have had on this planet since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution in the mid-1800s. So this is an enormous amount of change happening very, very quickly. So I think some of the people who have been calling for change in the political realm have no idea what they have asked for, but be careful, you might get it. I think it's going to be a lot more than they think. It's way beyond solar panels and windmills and biofuels, I'll tell you that. So and that's the only way it's going to happen. You know, one of the chief people who have been warning about the whole global warming problem and all the environmental problems associated with fossil fuels has recently come out saying that it's everything that's being proposed in with the conventional wisdom of these new energy alternatives that are dealing with the biofuels and even solar and wind. It's going to be too little too late because it's not fundamentally changing the way we're living quickly enough given the numbers of people on the planet who are becoming industrialized in China and India and in Brazil and elsewhere, and that there's just simply no way that that's going to be enough, and it's way too little too late. And this is, of course, what we've been saying for 15 years when we first started advising the Clinton administration and the CIA director on this issue, is that this is a matter that's going to get out of control, and we're going to need to get ahead of it and be very proactive and enlightened in how we bring this information out. And there are more and more people realizing that that's what has to happen. And so it's exciting because we have now all of the elements of this coming together, and we need your help. All of you who are listening to this interview need to join us in your prayers and meditations and the pujas you do to help make this transition occur smoothly and quickly and safely. And also join us at the OrionProject.org, and because I believe in the next 2 or 3 weeks, if all goes as planned, we will be taking all of the Stan Meyer equipment and have the opportunity to then study it and get that type of technology out to the public. But we're going to need several $100,000 more than we have now to open up a research facility and staff it with people to study what he had and to get it working again. It's been in storage for 12 years, so God only knows what condition it's in. And we haven't been able to evaluate the condition of it, unfortunately. And that's a big scientific and engineering undertaking, and we need your help and support. And so if you can go to the OrionProject.org and help us with that, that would be wonderful. And if you're interested in joining us on some of these expeditions out under the stars, go to CSETI.org and you can see the schedule, the tentative schedule for 2009 and where we're going to be. The first one will probably be on the Outer Banks along the ocean in North Carolina, the Barrier Islands, where we've had some amazing experiences. in the past couple of years. So,
you know, one thing that I'll mention about the Orion Transmissions again is I'm already finding that although everybody was affected by these, you know, most people don't realize it yet, but those of us that have been working on them, I know I've been, another woman and myself have been working on the transcriptions, and every time I read the transcriptions and do a little more editing and kind of involve myself in those, I'm just so struck by how profound and how spiritual they are, and it really affects me to read those. And then our sound person, we have a musician in our group that's been working on consolidating the sounds of the radar detectors, and Dr. Greer translating into what will fit on one CD to accompany the transcriptions. And he was not present at Joshua Tree when it actually happened, but I think because he's been listening to it so much, he says he's really experienced an increase in the number of lucid dreams he's having. He says his daily meditations have become more intense, and he really feels a greater energy and sense of deeper connection since in just the past few weeks. And so I think that, and he believes also he's being affected by listening to these recordings. And so when these become available for everyone will have this opportunity to become even more affected than they already are.
Right. You know, and for me, because I was in the midst of it and sort of doing the, quote, translations from these sort of packets of information and tones into knowledge, I scarcely recall what I said, to be honest with you. But it is going to be important that people can have this to read and also to listen to. It's really quite a remarkable thing, and thanks to Linda being there with a good digital recorder, we have that. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, wow. Well, you're more than welcome. It's always a pleasure to be out in the field with you under the stars and the ETs, and it's getting more and more incredible every single week that we go out, I think. And definitely the Outer Banks is beautiful. We have a wonderful beach site in a wildlife refuge, so we're undisturbed by anyone, and there's no one there but us and the wildlife and the ETs and the Celestials.
Yes, I know. It is beautiful. Well, I believe we're about out of time for this hour. I would like to thank Linda for joining me and also helping with all this work over the years and being there and joining us in these interviews. She has such a great recall and memory, and since she records everything happening, she's sort of our archivist and historian for the project, and it's just been very important and indispensable to have Linda a part of this all these years. And I'd like to thank the World Puja Network for hosting us, and thank all of you for listening to Conversations with Dr. Stephen Greer, and I look forward to speaking with all of you again soon. Have great holidays, and we'll join with you in meditation and prayer and under the stars together as we create the world of our dreams. Thank all of you.
Right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.